Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Innovation Alchemy. My name is Adam Castle, your host, and today is a very special episode because today is the 40th episode of this podcast, the podcast that, as you know, explores the mastery, the magic, and the mess of innovation and those bold enough and brave enough to build it. Now, before we dive in, I want to do a bit of a preamble to introduce my guest. Now, before there was cameras, before we had John, before we had this amazing backdrop overlooking Detroit, we were in a room. We were in a very small room recording on microphones. And today I brought back the gentleman that helped me put this whole thing together, whose idea it was in the first place to have this podcast. Him and John Mark and I sat in that room for hours. John Mark sat hours more trying to edit the crap that we put together. And I thought, this is the 40th episode. Mm-hmm. I'm a ways away from being 40, but you're really close to 40 now. Oh my gosh. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate this 40th episode than bring back the originator, my fellow co-host, former co-host, Adam Frye.
Thanks so much for having me, brother. It's so nice to be here.
I'm so excited to have you.
Feels good to be back in the WeTech gigs. Yeah. Feels good to be here with you. And kudos to you and Jammer and John. Thank you so much, John, for all that you're doing to make this podcast a success. It's been... I remember we were back in that room talking about all kinds of stuff all those years ago.
We were,
far, far away.
And so before we get too deep into it, I want to kind of set this up, right?
Let's do it.
Now, you've gone off to have an incredible career.
Thank you.
You're doing some amazing things on a global scale, and we're going to dive into that. But I want to play kind of one of our earliest bloopers. Now, this is from 2019. This is
pre-everything.
This is BC, before COVID, which is, a whole world away. And let's take a listen and we can chat about it.
Did you really just delete all the other ones that we were doing?
I just want to make sure that we're only using...
OCD.
I only have 2 terabytes of memory in this computer. I'm not going to fill it up.
He
with our
deletes
yammering.
2 15-second
yammering.
clips. You know what? People are going to want this in the future. This is the problem.
Gigs.
That you're not legacy enough for this because people are going to be like, I wish we had deep cuts of the early
we're not
stuff.
Saving that stuff.
And that's what you need. That's your notebook on a shelf. That's the podcast notebook on a shelf.
Not the notebook. We've given no good ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Even one idea. We haven't had a single good idea yet. I'm not going to record us bickering.
But people want that. That's what people want.
They don't. That's not what they're looking for. They want value. They want us to drive value into their lives.
It's all about
through microphone.
It's all about being engaging.
So is it on? It's recording?
It's recording and live.
Stop the recording. Keep it.
That's exactly it, man. And here we are. And people wanted it. I think those bloopers got more clicks than the original podcast did. I'm pretty
mostly
sure.
Us, right? And in that clip, I'm very clearly saying like no one wants this notebook on the shelf. Yeah. This is not something that anyone wants to hear. And I think what's funny about that is like you were so right.
Yeah.
I listen to that more than anything. Anytime I go into one of these podcast recordings, I listen to one of these old clips. It just reminds me how fun this used to be. And like where we started, the fact that this was something that we just had passion for and we're like, I think we can do this.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. I think for me, when I go back to those, it's usually like the texture that I'm looking for. It's like, we put all those great podcasts together. I stand by what's on them. I think there's a lot of great stuff in there. Yeah. But God, do we have a good time doing it.
So much so.
And that's the whole point, I think. If you're going to be growing a company, you're going to be doing all those awesome things. Yeah. You need these artifacts, you need these objects, you need these moments that you can go back to and just like laugh and enjoy it and just remember how great it was at the beginning because it can get messy in the middle.
It definitely helps, I think, level set. And also makes me think a lot about what that was like because it really was you and I in a room with John Mark.
That was it.
It was John Mark 8 hours of editing afterwards trying to find something that was good from what we said. But now we're here, right? So we've had so many conversations with folks over the years. This podcast has stayed true to what we started it as, which is conversations with founders, tidbits and bits of information that the founders that we work with can actually take and use in their everyday lives. But we teach it from a perspective of people that have been there and done that, who are actually in it and in that mess and in that kind of, zone where everything's ambiguous and no one really knows how to take that next step.
And that's kind of the beauty of WeTech. Like, the goal here is you need to be one step ahead of whatever founder it is that you're helping and supporting. You don't necessarily need to have like all this experience exiting 5 or 6 companies doing those things. Like our ecosystem isn't there yet. So anytime you can take the sort of like learnings of somebody who's like 1 or 2 steps ahead, collide them with the people that are right there, you're going to get some sort of motion. It's going to feel really good in the ecosystem. So I'm so glad. And I love that pretty much most of the logos stayed. I love the context. I loved when we talked about alchemy, creating something great out of perhaps nothing, and what does that look like? And
for sure.
Yeah, I think it just stands the test of time.
We still use the same intro music as well that we had Christy Cochran create for us. We had this like grand vision of we were going to use a different local artist for every single episode. And then it was like the amount of time it took to plan those episodes when it was just you and I especially was like, there is so much work.
And she's amazing. I actually still have her album on vinyl from the night where we went and got to meet her and chat about it all.
Yeah, so good. Us too. So you and I built this thing together. It was John Mark. We sat in that room. I remember that day where we were like, we can do this. And I think the first thing I said was like, this is too much work and I don't want to. And you were like, no, we're gonna do this. Which I feel like is a hallmark of your and I relationship of like, hey, Castle, you can do this.
Yeah, we can do this.
You'll figure it out. Yeah. What did we think this was going to be back then? What was that early kind of inkling of like, what do we want it to become?
I think, remember back in 2019, podcasting was like getting mainstream. It might have been relatively mainstream, but it not like it is today where literally every single person has one. I think for us, we realized that as a team of, maybe 2 or 3 advisors that were doing this, that we needed to be able to expand the reach. And we're having the same conversations over and over again. Like for me, for instance, I remember one of the earliest episodes or arcs we did was on building a sales process.
Yeah.
And I remember having the same conversation, right? Exactly.
The funnel
funeral. And so I remember having the same conversation over and over with, 200 founders over the course of, 3 or 4 years before we launched. And so it was about getting that out into the mainstream, into Windsor, Essex, which was really important to us. And then about just telling our story and helping others understand what it is that WeTech does. Because it is a bit ethereal, right? Like it is kind of, we do that. And we do a little bit of this. And we do some of that,
unless you're in it, you don't get a full scope.
And if you're an entrepreneur, maybe you aren't looking for a little bit of everything, but you really need help on the sales piece. And so maybe you stumbled upon it, right? And you were like, oh, wow, this is useful. I need to contact Adam and figure out what the heck's going to happen next. So that, and we just want to have fun. Like, it was really fun to do this.
And I think that was a different time. There was a lot more of that, I think. Now we're very much a heads down type place. We still have a good culture, but there's so much that's missing from like that I think it's that pre-COVID connectivity.
It's different. It's different.
That really changes. And what's interesting is we're not 750 companies that we worked with over the last 8 years. And so like those numbers keep going up. We had just the last quarter, like a record-breaking number of companies tried to apply to WeTech Alliance. We've had more in the last quarter accepted. We've got multiple steps now for application and how you get in. But the idea of this podcast is still to make it something accessible that everyone can kind of learn from and learn to grow beside us as we learn this stuff. Because that's really every conversation for me is like, how am I growing from this? And then how do I take that into my coaching sessions, which I'm still having almost every day with clients, right?
Well, and if you get a good nugget, like what are the odds you can then just say like, hey, come join me on the podcast. Let's have this conversation again.
Exactly.
You're going to be able to help hundreds of people, not just yourself. And that was always the genesis of it. And I think that's really the genesis of what like WeTech stands for. Like whether it's the events you're running, Scale Up, which is unbelievable. Like congrats what you've done with that program. Building partnerships, relationships all over the county, or just literally helping startups grow. It's about that combination of enjoyment and like having fun, but also like, hey, we know what the heck we're doing. Like this is proof point that we know what we're doing.
Oh, for sure. I think those values have really stayed strong. But this isn't a show about WeTech. This is always a show about our guests. And so, pre-COVID, pre-AI, pre-tariff chaos, that was where we started this thing. And here we are sitting here. This is 6 years later now. The world is not the same place. It's not the same place for you and I. We're both fathers now. As I mentioned, you're very close to being 40. I'm much younger, but that's besides the point. But also on top of that, like it's not the same world for founders. And so we saw the rise and fall of SaaS in the last couple of years, which is an insane thing to think about. You're seeing, the rise of physical AI now. So we're moving past that pure kind of AI mode of it's just software, it's just driving productivity, to how does it interact in physical spaces. And so there's so much kind of changing, but The founder you'd meet in 2019 versus the one walking in the door today, what do you think is that big difference?
It's probably access is probably the word I would use. Like when I'm thinking about that, a founder in 2019, there was still a lot of physically coming to a space.
Yep.
There was still a lot of like, what's happening in my community? Do I need to fly out to meet an investor? Like, am I going to Toronto, KW? Am I going where? Like, what am I doing? Am I going over to Detroit? So I think when you think about it, you know, We Tech Alliance is a great example of this. You have networks around the world that people can tap into. And that's very genuine. That's not just saying that.
No,
like,
that's
you
our value.
have
That's
them.
and
so
thing.
If I'm a founder now, I have the ability to connect in and actually go about sort of getting the best in class mentorship, growth coach, sales coach, leader, investor, whatever it is. They're infinitely more available now from an access perspective. I think the other element on that is that you have to think more ambitiously now as a founder than perhaps you were able to before. Particularly in Windsor, Essex, but I think it's very true of the Canadian market as an entrepreneur in general. You know, it used to be very simply put to say like, I'm just going to go over to the US. I'm going to make 40 cents on the dollar. I'm going to have all my customers there. I'm going to run it. And if I have customers in Canada, great. Now though, we need this ambition to be able to sort of scale outside of that. And one of the things that really caught me this year, I was able to, our North Guide, who I work for, we were lucky enough to get to go on the trade mission to Mexico that Canada put together, that Team Canada put together. It's the largest one of its kind.
Right?
Historic. It was something like 250 companies went down,
That's
400
wild.
business leaders. There was 2,000 B2B meetings set up between Canada and Mexican business partners. It's an incredible amount of work. And one of the key messages coming out of that from almost every single leader, business person, politician, doesn't matter, was in the new era that we've got today, Canadians need to be ambitious. They need to be looking at, what does it mean to have a partnership in Japan? What does it mean to work in Mexico? What does it mean to work in Europe? How do we have those? And of course, here in Canada, making sure we're selling and supporting the folks here. So I think those are the two big things. I think one is access. You have way, way more access now. Like even just think about your journey over the last 6 or 7 years, you yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Like your network is monstrous, and you have the ability to connect people to it in a really meaningful way. And then, so access and ambition would be the two pieces that I would think about, because I think we need a lot of ambition in our Canadian ecosystem right now. Like this is the moment for that to actually happen.
And I really want to dive in there because you have this perspective now, right? Like you're working with North Guide. North Guide is, for anyone that doesn't know, really made up of the folks that made Communitech.
That's right.
Communitech being this beacon of innovation in our ecosystem and the RIC ecosystem in Ontario and Canada. You know, it became this place, a magnet for folks that are looking to grow and build and do things really meaningful in the startup space, where you don't have to go to Toronto, you don't have to go to the Valley. It's someplace different and alternative. And I also find it has a much more community-minded culture around it versus some of the other ecosystems that I've
through a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really big trick. I think, you know, what Ian and Avi and the whole team, we have so many ex-Communitechers, ex-government folk that are working with us, and all of them bring the lens of it's about building community. What is our shared language? How do we show up? How do we support one another? What does it look like behind the scenes to be a real partner? And you know, it's simple stuff. Like you and I used to talk about this all the time. How do we make it so that there's one door that an entrepreneur comes through? So they don't have to tell their story 8 different times, and they don't have to get lucky that someone's having a good day and that they can connect. Like it's simple stuff like that. And Communitech was great. It was a door for that. And, you know, one of the things that really impresses me about this is one of the anchors they used to, I didn't know this until I joined North Guide, was one of the anchors they used to think about is we're creating the jobs that our kids will get. And it was this really amazing mindset of paying it forward. Like the work we're doing today is going to allow our kids to have an amazing career. And, you know, that kind of messaging, that kind of resonance is what helped build Waterloo and Kitchener into what it is today. Yeah.
That's awesome. What I love too is you see where Communitech is at now, and they've taken a much smaller footprint, really intentionally. This idea that there's so much activity going on around them that they're less needed to play that lead role and more needed to act as an API. And I've talked to Sheldon, who's their CEO there. And he's got a really brilliant kind of take on it, which is this idea that like, being redundant is not such a bad thing in this space because you've built in that infrastructure so that this stuff, the innovation ecosystem, the founders, the investors, right, the connections of industry, that all can thrive without intervention, without the need for this like constant kind of bringing things together. And so I see it as this really interesting blueprint of what could become here at some point, where there's so much activity going on and there's so much connectivity to those things that our role really becomes secondary to making who else is in this space stand up and take that spotlight for us.
Well, the entrepreneurs, hopefully.
Exactly.
It's not really about you guys.
Exactly.
I think that's the hard and
right?
the humble work, the humility that comes with, anybody in economic development, not just in innovation. It's when you think about it, those folks like you come in every day and give every day, all day. You're connecting people, you're supporting folks, you're doing that. But it's not about you.
Right.
It's about those folks that are getting the other side of that. And I think when you take that mentality and you have this sort of servant leadership, I know it's got like connotations to it, but you have this context in mind, you can get a lot done. What is it we used to say all the time? You can accomplish anything if you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's very, very true. I forget who the quote is. We'll look it up and maybe put it on the screen or something. But
potentially,
it's one of those things where like,
we'll go right there.
We'll put it on there. Is like, if you really don't care about who's going to get the credit for the success of this ecosystem, amazing things will happen. It's when ego gets in the way.
Exactly.
That you really start to see problems. Yeah. And if you have folks in long-standing positions that have high ego, it becomes very difficult to build the grassroots movements that you need to create an ecosystem. Because the entrepreneurs need to feel your arms around them. Right? No matter where they go.
It's interesting how much of that I think the theme of safety and creating that psychological vulnerability, like all of that, when we started this 6 years ago, was fringe. That was like, that's crazy talk. Why would you ever bring that up? It was, it was soft, or it was like there was some fringe people that just started to say it. They were just starting to bring it into the mentality of the business world. And now what we're finding through all of these changes, all these shocks to our systems, that's kind of paramount to making sure that the stuff that needs to get done and the jobs that I want my daughter to have are eventually created here. It's around creating a safe space for those founders to feel like they've got a fallback place, but they also have this opportunity to come somewhere and build without judgment, and actually, taking from another really great place in the ecosystem, Velocity does this well. Come here and build it.
Just build.
We don't care. And if you go there, it's like there's a wet lab that they've set up in the corner. There's like a greenhouse that they're growing stuff out of the basement. Like they don't care and they don't require permission, or they don't require you to ask permission. They say like, just come and just build it.
Well, and to your point, on culture, generations need different things.
Yeah.
And for the first time, maybe ever, we've got, 5 generations in the active workforce. And so the things that worked for our parents that maybe we tolerated but didn't love and thought, we'll change when we get there, or change what we can for our teams. Yeah. The next generation just straight up isn't going to deal with,
tolerate it,
and you've still got 2 generations or 3 generations above them and one underneath now coming in. So, it's not an easy world to lead in or to start a company in based on what we're talking about here. And so when you think about culture, I think a lot of this psychological safety is important. And I think that psychological safety plus velocity is going to get you where you need to go.
Yeah, for sure.
And what I mean by velocity is the delta between knowing you've made a decision and taking action on that decision. Yeah. And for founders who are listening, the best thing you can do is close that gap. Yeah. If you know you've got something to do and you're going to take a week and a half to do it when you know it only takes an hour, that's what's going to kill you. Yeah. Yeah. It's not really about having the right idea anymore. Yeah. Everyone's got a great idea. Yeah. Everyone's got the world in their palm. Now it's about can you create that psychological safety or a place, let's just even call it a place people want to work?
Yeah.
Are you a person people want to work with?
Yeah.
And can you make decisions and take action very quickly?
Yeah.
And if those things come together, like I see this at Northguide, it's a beautiful way of operating because we make a decision. There's not like an impetus to like wait, like go do the thing you know you need to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's very easy to get caught up in your own head this day and age. A lot of people are very lonely. They're very isolated. They're working on their own. There's not like a big group of people that's saying like, oh yeah, go do that. Good job. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
You just got to find it. You just got to find it in you to do.
Yeah. I think to your point on velocity, that's really our most important role as well, is this idea that we can shorten the distance between an entrepreneur and their next opportunity, but we can also make sure that we're building relationships that are fostered in a way that, you know, someone will pick up the phone when I need them to, when I've got a connection to make. And that's kind of a big piece of it. But I also think from a founder's perspective, as they're building right now, that velocity also leads to a lot of things like technical debt and the doubling back. But what I've seen is we're now in this world, right? The world of AI, where that technical debt is a lot easier to lift. It's a lot easier to move through. And you're not as kind of stuck with it. But
yeah, I think a lot of folks, the way a lot of folks think about this is I need to build the thing and then go sell the thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of changed to your point. Like you can we're running a health tech incubator in Barbados right now. And one of the things that we're realizing very quickly is how fast you can get a minimum viable product to market. Yeah. You know, that used to take thousands of dollars in weeks or if not months of energy. Like I remember working with, oh my gosh, Clinic Seeker, Lisa from Clinic Seeker. And I remember how long it took her every time she needed to make an adjustment to a minimum viable product and what that looked like to do and how difficult it was to manage and how much bandwidth she was putting into that. Yeah. And I look at that now, that can be vibe coded over the weekend. And then to your point about technical debt, once you've got customer 1, 10, 15, now we can bring it and make sure the back end's really solid and make sure that our security is proper, because that's the thing that AI doesn't do, right? It doesn't do that part very well. And if you don't really know how to code, it could be on nothing. Like this. It could literally be, you're building something on wishes and dreams, which is fine to get your first couple of customers, make sure you've got, a valid market. And then after that, go and reinvest and make sure it's really strong. And to AI hater people might not love that I said that, but like, it is for a lot of people that don't understand what it's creating.
No, it's a huge opportunity.
But I think you and I talk about this a lot, and I think this is the trick with AI. If you're cool with me going there. Okay, so I think the trick with AI is right now, you've got, how do I want to talk about this? There's two elements to this. There's expertise and there's time on task.
Yeah.
Okay, so millennials, really interestingly enough, we have a ton of expertise. Yeah. And in two ways. We have a lot of expertise in taking really novel technologies that scare the crap out of everybody else and making them usable, right? Yeah. Think about the internet, the cell phone, all of these different things we've been able to do.
Used to being on the frontier.
Social media. We're on the frontier of all of these things. We're always the first users. We're always the biggest market. Yeah. So when it blows up, I mean. Yeah. And so I think we have a lot of adaptability in terms of taking new technologies, making them digestible and actually using them effectively. The second thing that we're really good at in this way is that we've actually been working long enough now to have expertise in our job. Yeah. Like I know how the sales process works. I know what a good cold email sounds like. I know what it means to write a good contract, a good proposal, have a conversation with you. I know how the follow-up email is supposed to sound. If you're just coming out of school and you don't have that, or you're just getting a job, it doesn't have to be out of school. If you're just getting a job and you don't have that yet, and you go to AI and you say, make me a marketing plan. Yeah. You're going to think it's magic. Yeah. You're going to be like, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I asked it, and in 4 minutes, I have a 12-page briefing note that I can send to my executive team, and then I'll have it parse out how to do it. But if you're in marketing, and you've been in marketing for a decade, you know what a good one looks like. Yeah, yeah. So you'll know whether or not to say, oh, this is bad, this is good, this isn't, this is. And so I think the key here is, do you have a lot of expertise that you can document and see and visualize? And then can you spend a lot of time with AI? Yeah. Can you actually get in there and understand what an MCB is? How do you plug HubSpot into Cloud Cowork?
Yeah.
How do you do it with Apollo, right? How do you do it so that everything kind of parses and works together the right way? And of course, if you can afford it, like it's only going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trick. I think it's expertise and time on task, because the generations after us we're seeing aren't getting those entry-level jobs. They're not going to build the expertise up very quickly. And the generations that came before us, we know, don't adapt technology in the way that it's meant to be adapted necessarily. It's just there's a natural resistance to it, whereas we kind of embrace it as like, okay, what can I do with this? How does this work? So that's my hot take on AI, I think, is if you can get the expertise part right and you know what great looks like, and you spend a lot of time and you're curious and playful, it's going to be really great for you. And I think millennials are really well suited right now to being able to help navigate it.
I think so too. I want to bring us back for a second and zoom out again, right? Let's talk about Canada. Your work now takes you to this global place. You're allowed to see or able to see, you have this passport that takes you to all of these different individual places where you can actually see what's working, what isn't. And so I want to take this hot take on Canada, where what do we have right now that's working really well? And how do we pull at that thread to make it the central one about innovation in this country?
There's a lot to unravel there. So we can start by starting. I think, what does Canada do extremely well? We have world-class talent. Our academic institutions, the way we train folks, the way we develop people, we have really, really high-end talent. And that's, I think, across the spectrum. I think, even if you went into tool and die and machining, I think if you went around the world, folks would say like Canadians know how to do that, like best in class, best in the world. I think we're really quite good at that. I think we're also an ambitious group, not naturally, but we can be. And so I think we can have vision and we can move forward. And one of the interesting things about traveling around has that's shown me about Canada is the ecosystem approach that we take. People love and want to replicate. And I know it has its challenges. And I know it's not always the way it appears on the outside. And yet, whether it's Mexico, whether I was down in Austin for Techna and South by Southwest, whether we're over in Belize or Barbados or Sweden or Japan, folks are interested in how to create ecosystems that create thriving entrepreneurs. And we are really good at this. And I think there's an opportunity for Canada to start to export some of its innovation expertise around the world and start to connect these larger hubs and play a role in doing that, right? So like you were part of Canada's tech network, right? So, where we had, 40 or something hubs across the country, maybe 26, 40 hubs all across the country that would come together twice a year, still do come together twice a year and have their CEO retreat. What if you were able to zoom out and do that across the globe? Like where you really looked at who were the biggest ones or the ones that were sort of matched up properly. And you bring them together to actually be able to sort of have these new routes built and this new sort of collectivism built. And then heck, if the startups grow, you've got new trade partners. You've got new trade access. You've got new relationships. And so I think there's something to be done here around Canadian innovation being exported around the world right now. It feels like a moment in terms of ecosystem development and in terms of, our talent. I think the challenge here is there's a lot of talk about how do we keep our talent in Canada. And I think that's an important conversation for us to be having because everyone is so mobile right now. That's the other thing I'm noticing around the world is people are okay with moving. Like, especially if you have a little bit of money. People are like, fine, I'll move to London. Fine,
especially
I'll move
with
to
capital,
Austin.
right? It makes
fine,
it
I'll
that much
move
easier.
to Mexico, right? And so it's an interesting conversation as to whether or not the entrepreneurs should feel obligated to stay and try to build something here, but it's not really about that, right? Like they should go where the markets tell them to go. They should go where access to capital is, and they're going to. And so it's on the UNIs of the world, on the WeTechs of the world, to be able to build the ecosystem that supports those entrepreneurs being here. I don't know that it's on the entrepreneurs to feel this sense of guilt to stay. And a big part of that, of course, is getting Canadian capital to invest and to not be on the Series C, but to be on the Series A. And how do we get them to think about taking a chance? I remember we used to go to Angel Nights all the time, all across this region when we were together. And I don't know that we saw one big investment in a tech firm, and there was lots of money there.
Yeah.
So, what do we do? This seems to be the collision we need to make.
Yeah. There's I think the flip side is like contrary to that, we have all this opportunity, we have the capital, we have the talent, we have the ability to make these connections. But this last quarter, as reported by Globe and Mail, was like the single smallest in terms of VC investment in Series A's in our country. And so there's a bit of a contradiction, I think, in like we can see the North Star of where we need to go. But I also think there needs to be almost more of a cultural shift around how we're getting there together. Because I think for too long, we've depended on someplace to provide the capital, provide the network, provide the customers, right?
Yeah, easy
and
access.
so, which has been great. It's been the single greatest advantage that we've had. But then, your advantage has always become your risks, or they have that opportunity to when it's flipped, right?
Yeah. And it's not about abandoning partnerships around the world to be just here.
Yep.
It's about ensuring that if a company wants to start here and scale around the world, much like you and I talk about all the time, what does it take for them to be able to do that?
Right.
And how do we close the gap between what's here and what's not?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's going to be capital because you need the money to scale and it's available elsewhere.
Yeah.
But other times it can be other things, right? It can be community. It can be really strong access to mentorship where like they don't want to leave. They want to be by their mentor. They want to be by their community. Heck, it can be, the team at ECDev did with the battery plant can be an anchor, a piece that we bring in that allows others to thrive around it and can really play a big role. So there's lots of ways to go about doing this. But if you're asking what I think that Canada has a ton of ability to get out into the world and show the world like what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And it's astounding what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
We're just a humble group of people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to take a minute for us to be able to sort of shed that mantra or that like mindset and move out and be like, hey, we are world class.
Yeah.
Like world class at this. You
Yeah.
want to work with us. Let's get out there and do it. So
talk to me a little bit about some of the places you've been in terms of what they're doing, what's been successful. What does the startup ecosystem in Mexico look like?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I believe it was ranked like number 79 in the world, 76 in the world. Don't quote me on that. But it was somewhere there when we went down. It's an interesting piece. They're really trying to replicate the cluster environment. Yeah. So they've got clusters. I think there's 15 in Nuevo Leon when I was there. And the business climate is really great. Folks just get it. They want to move quickly and they understand like how the pacing works. But if you're looking at like how does the difference happen, like what's different is I think they're really focused on these clusters and their university partners. So there's a very big anchor around those and trying to scale them up. There's also quite a bit of like, let's say medical travel tourism. So like folks going down there to have a better, not better access, but let's say like more cost-effective access to healthcare. So there's a little bit of that going on there, which was really interesting. When I was at Tecna in Austin, it was great to get to meet the CEOs there. They're all membership driven. It's all they need.
Very, very different models,
so
right?
Sometimes you're paying upwards of $50,000 to be a member of a tech group like WeTech, right?
Yeah.
Or you can go across. We're going to be starting off a new ecosystem in Belize. We've just got a really contract with the International Development Bank there, and that is going to be anchored around some universities to get started. And like, how do we sort of start to generate this IP, right? And so it's different everywhere you go. However, I think the keys are still the same.
Yeah.
How do you get people matched up with the right mentors at the right moment that you and I used to talk about? How do you make sure they have access to capital? And then how do you build a community that they want to be a part of? And like shout from the rooftops and like talk about all the time, right?
Yeah, I think the keys are universal. What we're seeing even in the research is that how they interact is really the magic maker, right? Like you can put all the ingredients to life in a jar and seal it in a dark room. It doesn't mean that in multi-celled, organisms are going to come out of it. But the idea that if you have government resources, if you have industry, if you've got academia, if you have the talent, if you've got the ambition, those things colliding, right? Enough of that creates something special and something starts to spark.
Yeah, I mean, you and I built a lot of our thought around that MIT innovation ecosystem model, right? So what are those 5 core elements? But I think the way you're talking about it makes a lot of sense to me, which is to say, like we talked about before, the delta between having a partnership and actioning a partnership, or the delta between like, hey, we met, let's definitely grab coffee and start that program we were talking about, and then actually doing that is the leg. And people are busy. You know, like people are really, really busy. That's the other thing I'm noticing right now. Doesn't matter who I'm talking to, where around the world, everyone's tired and they're really busy. And so I think finding ways for ecosystems to cut through the noise and understand what the signal is really quickly is also going to help. So there's 2 things, right? There's the delta between making the decision and doing the thing, right? Taking the action. But the secondary element of that too is picking the right things to take action on, which is really, really important. So you could decide you need to do 10 things, but really maybe 2 of them will move the needle. And if you don't have community, if you don't have mentorship, if you're not thinking about these things, then there's a chance you could really burn a lot of cycles trying to take a lot of action that isn't going to lead anywhere, which is why it's so important as an ecosystem that you understand who's doing what role do you play, how does it all come together, and then have a songbook. How do we talk about us? Right? How do we talk about, and I mean the collective us, right? Like, how do you and IWE and SBC and all these acronyms, sorry, everyone, how do all of these folks come together in a way that if I'm an entrepreneur, it becomes like so easy for me to be a part of this. And it becomes so easy for me to know who and when and where and what and how.
The understanding,
Because they don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to work 18 hours a day and then have to go and have 9 meetings to get $5,000 in help. Like, no one's gonna do that. Right?
No one has the bandwidth anymore.
And it takes like an egoless person to be able to say, I can empathize with that. I know it's harder for me. I know it's harder for my partners. But we're going to find a way to do what's best for this group right now. And I think ecosystems that can do that really do genuinely put those entrepreneurs first, are the ones that you see in the magazines everywhere. Magazines. No one reads magazines.
No one.
That you see all over the internet right now that are doing really well.
What I like is, I think, so we've touched on, you know, what has changed from 6 years ago to now, and there's obviously everything, right? But at the same time, those ingredients are still the same. The things that are needed are the same. When you look at it from an ecosystem perspective, the 2 things you need are like a consistent direction, and then the players that are willing to be there together, so that, you know, the political will or the, you know, the leadership will to kind of bring things together and to move the needle on it.
Or the money. Quite frankly, like, right? I think I used to joke, like, you either need a billionaire or an extremely strong mayor. Like, those are the 2 things that can really help a local ecosystem thrive.
But that idea, I think, translates directly into being a founder, which is like, know your priorities, understand where you fit, because it's all systems, right? Whether we're talking about an economic one, we're talking about a business and how that fits into the, you know, the supply chain, the customers, the, you know, the surrounding area, the support network. All of those things are just a system that you have to understand how to kind of navigate through.
Yeah, I don't like that though.
Okay.
I don't like that at all. Like, maybe, but if I were to offer you an exchange that said, like, okay, here's the thing, you can figure out that local system and how you play in it and what your role is and who to play and what to do, or you could spend those hours and those cycles selling.
Oh yeah, I don't mean it from a perspective of like it's their job to figure that part out.
Okay.
They are a part of. They are an organism within. And so it's more so our job to figure out how we provide, I think, that one door experience to those folks so that they don't have to spend their time
without taking them away from what's important. What's important for them is capital, like
understanding
sales,
the priorities,
like
getting sales, getting customers
going. Like you have nothing until you have a sale. Like exactly. You need to get to that first customer and you need to do it quickly. And so anything that distracts from that is potentially like not useful. And so as an ecosystem, like you say, having one door is a really great way to do that. You know, having you guys have done a great job of this, having really casual meetups
where it's not you. There's
Yeah.
no speaker. There's no
Yeah.
nothing. It's like, it's not branded about anything but those folks. And you just come together and they just get a chance to talk to
Yeah.
each other, blow off some steam, make some connections. Because if 90% of these folks are going to fail,
Yeah.
maybe they're going to want to join somebody else's startup, which is also the part of the ecosystem's
opportunity,
job,
yeah.
which is, hey, cross-pollination of talent
Yeah.
is so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because these people are going to fail, and that's okay. It really is, because then they can go work on the next thing or the next thing or
Yeah,
the
it's-
next thing with their friends and the people they've met. So it really is about like lowering the barrier in a bunch of ways and then driving value for these folks such that they get first sales or they build community.
Yeah.
And understanding, how to navigate a program or doing these different
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
like that takes away from literally what they need to do.
Yeah, it's
to
not
survive.
it's not a natural
Right. So it's
activity.
like, it's for sure on you to figure it
Yeah.
out. I don't think it's on them actually,
Yeah.
really at all. And I know like skin in the game wise, you'd like them to have it, but I think the purpose of ecosystems is to actually grow these folks. And in order to do that, they need to be very focused.
I agree. Yeah. And that focus is the same, whether it's you're working through developing out an ecosystem, you're developing out a business, you need to understand that like the strategy cannot be grants. It cannot be looking for, even I've seen a lot out there where it's like, there's prep to get into even accelerators. And this idea that your whole strategy as a startup is to get into Y Combinator instead of getting sales. And so I think we're starting to see this like immersion of a different kind of founder. It's a lot more scrappy. They're not worried about where the investment dollars are coming from. They're worried about where their next sale is coming from, because they're using it ultimately for that bootstrapping until a certain point.
Well,
right?
and one begets the other. And, certain companies need investment. Like certain companies have markets they have to fight in. They have a moat they have to protect. They'll need lots of money to get to market.
Yeah.
Others don't.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay. You can do it in a bunch of different ways. But I think the goal here is like, if you have an idea, by the way, if you have an idea, come talk to WeTech. Like if you have an idea,
Yeah.
how do you even know an ecosystem exists?
Yeah.
Like if I've been working at Green Shield or Libro, shout out Libro. If I've been working at Libro for 30 years and I have an idea on how to do something, how do I even know?
Yeah.
Right. So it comes down to sometimes it's even like the basics of Facebook ads and events and like being out and letting people know what's going on. And it goes all the way up the scale to, creating a unified brand regionally around innovation and around an ecosystem. And that word, unfortunately, has become really ethereal to folks. So the word itself is losing its luster.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a matter of like, who are all those five? We have the MIT innovation ecosystem. There's 5 core players. Who are they? How do we get them together? How do we mash them up? How do we create a brand around it? And then who owns driving the direction of the brand?
Yeah.
And over time, you'll find those leaders, right? Like you'll find those people, but you do all have to get in a room and agree.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
That's the critical component to all of this. Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the things that we instituted, I think not too long after you left, so we initially had this like grand plan, as we always do, for a consistent like early stage founder kind of boot camp, right? And it was 12 weeks or 8 weeks, something like that. But we kept having to distill it down because early founders, they don't need programming that's long and extensive and overly bulky, right?
No.
And especially if you don't have a business, if you just got an idea.
Yeah.
And so Suzanne on our team whittled everything down to this session that we now call Innovation Blueprint.
Great.
And all it is identifying, how do you think about a problem? What is that growth mindset from a perspective of like, we want to encourage businesses that have a mentality of growth and expansion at WeTech. How do you determine whether or not something's a good idea to follow or not? Yeah. And then the last half of it is all like, here's in our ecosystem who's not us that can help you. Here's what WeTech does, and here's our core tenants, but also here's Small Business Center. Also here's CFTC. Also here's all of these players that exist, and we run that on a regular basis. That's every 2 months. Yeah. And it's funny, we continue to see the numbers go up. We've trained over 600 people, and just this very simple, here's how to think about it, and here's where you go in case you're looking for a little bit more.
Right? And like that's exactly what they need. And then for you, it's like scouting.
Yes.
right? You're like, oh, actually, those two were really awesome.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like, let's get them into the growth programming,
exactly.
right? And let's get
Yeah,
them into these other connections, and
Yeah.
these communities. So it's about having a ton of open doors, letting people kind of come in and out.
Yeah.
And you talk about this all the time really well in your blog. It's just like the ecosystem's an organism.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you feed it? How do you
Yeah.
take care of it? How do you nurture it? What does it take to do that?
Yeah.
And it is really on the leaders of the ecosystem to be able to do
Yeah.
that.
So there's so many more things I want to
I know.
talk to you about.
I'll be back.
But this hour has flew by.
Is that an hour?
Yeah, we're almost
my
there.
gosh.
But what I want to ask you before this, so in another 6 years, we're at episode 80. Where do we want to be? What do we want this conversation to be like
Episode
then?
80. Well, what'll that be? Another 6 years. Holy smokes. How old will the girls be? 10? 10? We'll have little ones running around. Maybe we'll bring them. Maybe they'll have little
They'll have
ideas.
their own
They'll have little
podcast. Yeah,
ideas,
yeah.
little lemonade stands or something, if that's still a thing
Yeah.
then. What will be happening in 6 years' time that I hope we're talking about? I hope that we're talking about a meaningful transition in work. I think we have a lot of folks right now who are older in the workforce that are looking for meaning, and like, what is their next step going to look like? If you're, 55 to 60, you got a lot of juice in the tank, and you're still like, you want to give back. So what does work kind of look like for those folks? And what does that mean for those kind of coming back up? I hope we're talking about a really large cultural shift in the way that we work, in the way we operate, the way we get ideas from people. So I hope we're talking about that. I hope we're talking about the, 2 or 3 big companies that have come out of Windsor and have come back.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing to grow them and, kind of let them leave the nest and go do the great things they're going to do and cheer them on, of course. But I hope we're talking about the 2 or 3 that have come back and have helped to build this ecosystem into what it will be then. And I hope that means, we have tons of meetups. We've got executive growth groups. We've got groups for sales leaders and marketing leaders. And we've got, people who are introducing people to investors, and there's a big flow of ideas. And so I hope when we come back, we're talking about those folks and how great it is to have this ecosystem giving back and self-reinforcing. I hope we're talking about the nature of work changing in a really meaningful way. And I hope that when we come back together, folks are just less tired. Like I know that sounds really simple, but I hope that whatever this sort of ethereal feeling around the world is right now, and it's a scary place. There's every day something happens. It feels very weary. I like that word. I hope that's lifted. I hope we've come through this, and now we're talking about how great things are again, and how wonderful and how lucky we are. So that's
to me, I hope we come back and it's a different host that's asking us these questions.
Cool. I love that.
I hope the torch has been passed, and that you and I are sharing a new perspective with someone else that's taken up this mantle and gets to have these conversations with
That'd
founders.
be really cool. And then you and I can have our own podcast.
Of course,
and then we
obviously.
can do it that way.
Yeah. Well, until then, I'm so grateful for your friendship.
Thanks,
and I'm
brother.
excited for your perspective and to continue learning from you as you continue to grow. And I can't wait to see where it takes us.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you a lot.
All right, thank you. This has been Innovation Alchemy. My name is Adam Castle.
And I'm Adam Frye.